Hey folks, how's it going? So while everybody is distracted by the mainstream media and their coverage of Ukraine, their coverage of Israel, the Trump indictments, and all this other stuff that's being pushed on us through mainstream media, some important stuff is being overlooked, probably intentionally. I'm going to break these articles up over the next couple of days just to make these videos a little bit shorter. But this first article that I want to cover today comes from the Daily Huddle. And for those, the link will be down below. 84.5 billion exits JPMorgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup in 3 months as depositors take flight. Three of America's biggest banks just watched 84.5 billion worth of deposits disappear in a single quarter. JPMorgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citi all recorded an outflow of deposits in Q3, according to each bank's most recent reports. JPMorgan Chase's new Q3 earnings report details 31 billion decrease in deposits from 2.387 trillion to 2.356 trillion. That's a lot of money, folks. Wells Fargo reported a 7.1 billion decrease from 1.3474 trillion to 1.3403 trillion, while Citi recorded a $46.4 billion drop from 1.3199 trillion to 1.2735 trillion. Despite the drop in deposits, however, JPMorgan Chase recorded a net income of $13.2 billion. Zooming out, data from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis shows deposits across all commercial banks are down from an all-time high of $18.203 trillion in August of last year to $17.365 trillion at time of publishing. In a statement to shareholders, JPMorgan CEO Jamie Dimon issued an alert on global tensions and a fresh warning on the potential future rate hikes. Dimon says we're now living through what could be the most dangerous era the world has seen in decades. Currently, U.S. consumers and businesses, this is quoting Jamie Dimon, currently, U.S. consumers and businesses generally remain healthy, although consumers are spending down their excess cash buffers. I'll get to that in just a second. However, persistently tight labor markets as well as extremely high government debt levels with the largest peacetime fiscal deficits ever are increasing the risk that inflation remains elevated and interest rates rise further from here. Additionally, we still do not know the longer-term consequences of quantitative tightening, the rate hikes, which reduces liquidity in the system at a time when market-making capabilities are increasingly limited by regulations. Furthermore, the war in Ukraine, compounded by last week's attacks on Israel, may have far-reaching impacts on energy and food markets, global trade, and geopolitical relationships. This may be the most dangerous time the world has seen in decades. While we hope for the best, we prepare the firm for a broad range of outcomes so we can consistently deliver for clients no matter the environment. All right, so, okay, he's talking there about the mass outflow of deposits and the conflicts and risks of conflicts that seem to be growing exponentially out of control around the world. All right, the first thing I want to cover is the outflow of deposits. It's happening because of, as I see it, two main causes. First and foremost, the bulk of those deposits are going to be from people who understand how unstable and how risky the banking system is right now. These are really smart people that invest thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars on a regular basis, They know the markets like nobody else does, and they're aware of the dangers in the system right now, the risks that are being taken, the risks from excessive printing of money, excessive debt loads, excessive spending, and the current divesting of U.S. treasuries by China and other countries. And that's going to be for a video for another time. But these investors understand what's coming down the line. They see the signs, the writing on the wall. So what they're doing is they're pulling their money out of the riskiest plays, trying to play them more conservatively as a hedge against the coming financial chaos that we're all going to experience. The second factor leading to this deposit flight, and it's less of a factor than the first one that I mentioned, simply because it's inflation. All of this debt, all of this money printing is fueling this massive inflation problem, this massive inflation bubble that we're dealing with. And another thing that's causing these deposits to take flight is this inflation, the impact it's having on the middle class and lower middle class and even the poor, or I should say especially the poor, because inflation is a tax, and it's a tax that hits the poorest hardest of all. So what we're seeing is everybody's spending more and more on mortgages, on their house payments, on their rent. Why? Because this quantitative tightening, as the Fed is constantly ratcheting up the interest rates on these reserves, that in turn is having an impact on banking sector and mortgage interest rates on mortgages. That in turn gets translated down to people's personal mortgages and even rental prices, because despite what a lot of people might think, a lot of people that own rental property, they actually have mortgages on those houses. That's how they're able to own them. They don't own them outright. And as these interest rates, particularly with these variable rate mortgages, those rates are climbing and climbing and climbing, so they're having to go up and up and up on their rents. All right, so due to rents going up, inflation hitting food, hitting energy, gas, heating, electricity, you name it, everything is going up right now. And people have less and less money to be able to hold in banks, or less and less money to be used for investments. You're going to see this also translated into massive amounts of cash outs from 401ks, or people are going to stop contributing to their 401ks because they simply don't have the extra money to do that. So what we're seeing is not just the wealthy that understand what's happening, pulling their money out of the banks and moving them to safer investments and holdings, but we're also seeing direct impact of inflation causing people not to have those extra funds that would normally be sitting in their bank accounts. A lot of people built up a lot of cash reserves during the pandemic because they were getting these checks from the government. Some people were getting unemployment checks for not being at work. They were actually making more on unemployment than they were working. So plus the fact that mortgages were frozen. Student loan debts, student loan payments were frozen, and people stopped spending on paying on these. So they were just bankrolling. They were just banking all that cash. What they weren't spending on non-essential, frivolous items at Walmart and on credit cards and on Amazon and what have you. So people had bankrolled, or people had banked a lot of that extra cash. They'd built up a lot of reserves. That reserve is now gone for the most part. People are now relying more and more on credit card debt to buy groceries, to pay bills. They've cashed out their 401ks as much as they could. Some are still doing it as they get laid off, because layoffs are still happening. So this is a problem that's going to compound as we go along. You're going to see more and more and more money exit the banking system. People are not going to have the money just sit in their banks. They're not going to have the money to invest in stocks or in bonds. Not to mention the unreliability of the bond market itself. So this $84.5 billion happened just in the last quarter. Add to that the billions that left in the previous two quarters. I don't remember the numbers offhand, but I did do a video about them. So we're talking about tens of billions, possibly is closing in on trillions of dollars, leaving the world's biggest banks. This is going to be aggravated also by the fact that, as I said, countries are starting to divest themselves of U.S. treasuries at an alarming rate. I've already covered this to a degree, but I will be covering that some more in another video. You're going to see this happen a lot. This is a sign of a much larger financial problem a little further down the road. Think of it like a tsunami. When there's a earthquake under the ocean and you have this tsunami effect, what do you see when the beaches that are impacted or affected? You see the water levels drop as the water is pulled out, and then it drops lower and lower and lower before the tsunami wave comes crashing back in and destroying everything. We're going to see a tsunami, a financial tsunami, hit this country. Now, bear that in mind. Here we are. Biden is asking for $100 billion to fund the wars in Ukraine and Israel, as well as to provide assistance for arming Taiwan, and a small token amount to be set aside for the southern border. But roughly 60 billion, I should say, or so, is going to be sent to Ukraine. I believe it's some 30 billion for Israel. I think there's a 7 billion set aside for Taiwan, and I don't even remember the number that was attributed to the southern border, but it's a pitiful amount. And again, that in itself is a separate video that I want to cover. This is not being covered by a lot of mainstream media. Why? Because they're pushing all of these big stories, the Trump indictments, the Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, all of this is a distraction. And these wars were being pushed into World War III intentionally. There's a purpose behind this, and they're flooding the media with these stories to distract you from all the warning signs that are showing up elsewhere. So people, please pay attention. Don't just get locked in on this heated debate that's dividing the country about who's right and who's wrong between Israel and Palestinians, Russia and Ukraine. There's a lot going on there in those subjects by themselves. And because they're so divisive, that is being used to distract you from all these other things that are going on. So please be aware. Please pay attention. This is one more crack showing in the financial system. And they're not going to be telling you all about this. They don't want you to know about this. They don't want you to know what's coming. They don't want you to be able to prepare for what's coming. Because if you get wiped out during this reset, this next crash, while you're getting while you're financially getting wrecked and losing everything you've got, the wealthy, the bankers, the political elite that are behind all of this stuff, they're getting richer and richer and richer. They're just grabbing things up left and right. You have to pay attention to this. Don't get so focused on one subject that you ignore all else. That's all I've got for the day. I will be coming out with some more videos. I've got several other subjects that I want to talk about. So I'm going to stop here. Keep prepping, folks. Don't stop prepping. You need to get ready. And I'm not talking about just food, ammo, medical supplies. Get your house in order financially any way you possibly can as well. Pay off your debt. Get rid of that debt as fast as you can. Because when this all goes down, when it all comes crashing down, the more debt you hold, the harder it's going to hurt you. A lot of people might be thinking if everything crashes, they're not going to be able to come repo my house or repo my car. You would be sadly mistaken if that's what you're thinking. Because they will still come for that stuff. They will still come after the money that you owe them. So get that debt paid off. Stack food. Those are your priorities. Stack water, water filtration, defensive tools, medical supplies. You need to be able to treat yourself at home because you may not be able to afford to go to a doctor, assuming there's even doctors available. So keep prepping, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your families, look out for each other. And until next time, folks, I'll catch you later.